This is Join Us in France, episode 246. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is a podcast for Francophiles where you'll hear pragmatic advice for your next trip to France, and it's really good to be back from my summer break. Today, Elise and I take you to the city of Rodez, that's R-O-D-E-Z, in the southwest of France, because we like to talk about all of France. Rodez is a couple of hours away from Toulouse, where we both live, so it's a place we know well. In this episode, Elise gives us a nice review of a couple of museums, and also we discussed the local food specialty called aligot. Love that stuff. When we recorded this episode several weeks ago, we thought we'd talk about both Rodez and Conques in the same episode, but there was so much to talk about on Rodez that I decided to split it in two. So you'll hear about Conques next Sunday. Rodez is about a 2-hour drive from either Toulouse or Montpellier, and there is so much to do and see around there that you could really spend a few nights based in Rodez and take day trips to places like Belcastel. I was just in Belcastel. Oh, what a gorgeous place. That was a really good experience. My legs hurt a little bit because it's very hilly, but it was very nice. And another place you might consider is Estaing and other gorgeous villages nearby. I'm sure we'll do more episodes about those places at some point, but we've already done some episodes about other towns and attractions within an hour drive of Rodez that you might want to include in any trip you're planning. For instance, Figeac, that's episode 143, and Millau with its fabulous bridge, that's episode 146. Now, we use a lot of French names on this podcast, and sometimes I don't know how to say French names in English. So if you're not sure how to spell them, you'll find them all written out on the episode page at joinusinfrance.com/246. I released 2 GPS-aware Paris tours a couple of weeks ago, and the sales are going great. I'm getting really positive feedback from folks who took the tour, and that makes me so happy. So I'm going to share a short one with you. This person says, quote, "Wow, thank you for such an entertaining peek into the history of Paris. I did this tour with my husband on our first visit to Paris. We loved going at our own pace and learning about the city without the need to join a large group of sometimes loud or annoying tourists. Thank you for a great experience at a great price." Thank you so much, whoever you are. And when you listening to me right now take the tour as well, as I hope you do, I'd appreciate a review because this is all new and reviews make a big difference at this stage. Bonjour Elise.
Bonjour Annie.
How are you today?
I am fine.
On this warm summer day.
It's a warm summer day that's not too hot.
That's right. Yeah, we had some severe heat late June.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently next week we're going to get a few days of super hot as well.
Oh, I love that. Really.
Yeah.
I'm good up to about 92, 93 Fahrenheit, and then I start wilting.
Yeah, it's hard to do anything.
It's really hard.
Yeah, it's hard to do anything. But it happens. We have days of heat waves.
Yeah. Well, especially here in around Toulouse. And of course, the problem is we have a huge problem with drought. Mm-hmm. We are one of the departments that's an alert rouge when it comes to drought at this point.
Not enough water.
Not enough water. No rain. We haven't had rain in a long time. So everything's wilting, not just me.
So today we're going to talk about places that haven't melted yet.
That haven't melted yet, exactly.
Rodez and Conques.
Rodez and Conques.
In the Aveyron
In the
department.
Aveyron, right. We're traveling a little farther than we have in the past few podcasts where we've been doing a day in. This time we're going to go to a department that's a bit further away, and it's very big. Actually, the Aveyron is the third largest in square miles, kilometers, whatever you're using as a measure, in the entire country. It's very, very big, and it covers a lot of territory that is part of the Massif Central.
Right. So it's hilly and
it's vallonné. It has gorges. It has rivers. It has hills. It has, as you get up to the extreme northeast part of the Aveyron, you get into the Aubrac, which is what in French are called the plateau. It's a limestone. I don't even know what the word
plateau?
Is that what we say in English? Do we say plateau?
I think so.
It's very varied. It's fairly rural as a department. And very, 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 very beautiful.
Yes, it's
very beautiful.
Yeah, the scenery is nice, and it's not very much populated, like you said.
Not, right.
And it tends to be cooler than the rest of the region.
Yes.
So if it's going to snow somewhere in Occitanie, it'll be in Aveyron.
It'll be Aveyron. Yeah. And then, of course, especially the northern half, which is, we're going to be talking about Rodez, which is pretty much dead center.
Well, in the Pyrenees, too, obviously. It snows in the Pyrenees.
Those are high mountains, right. But the Rodez is the main city in Aveyron, which is it's about the same size as Albi. That is, it's about 55,000 people.
Okay.
The metropolitan area, about 80-something thousand people. Mm-hmm. It was really a kind of backwater town for a long time. It had a very great history in the beginning, which I'll talk about a little bit because it sort of brings us back to things like Asterix comics and stuff like that. Oh. But in the more or less recent past, it was really a place that was kind of like a sleepy backwater town. But the second half of the 20th century brought in a lot of high tech and startups and things like that. And so it's actually a fairly dynamic little city. And it is indeed the county seat of the department, which is another thing. It has all of its administrative offices. But of course, that's not the reason that I find it interesting. And so we're going to talk about Rodez, and then we're going to go north, actually, 45 kilometers, slightly northeast, actually. I took a look at the map again this morning. I always think things are further in west or east. I never think things are directly north. I don't know why. I just have this weird thing in my head. But it is actually pretty much straight north, the small, wonderful village of Conques.
Mm-hmm. Conqueus.
Yeah. And another time we'll do the southern half, which is where one of your favorite places is, which is, of course, the aqueduct of Millau.
Yes.
But that's for another podcast because there's a whole lot of stuff to talk about in this one very, very big department. But so now this could be a day, but it's more likely to be an overnighter, especially if you're
starting
coming
from Toulouse. Yeah.
You could also do this coming from Montpellier.
Right, right.
There's a route that takes you up basically and up and around and into this area from Montpellier, but it's pretty much the same thing. This is a very nice thing to do. I would say especially for those people who've already explored so much of Provence, of the area, the villages that are closer to Languedoc down below near the Mediterranean, or even Dordogne, if you have time to explore and discover this part of France. It is really just so very beautiful and so very much uncrowded compared to so many other places.
Yeah.
You know, it's really one of the nicest things about this place. It is, as you mentioned, it can be cold and nasty in the winter, not necessarily very snowy until you get up to the Aubrac. Aubrac is the equivalent of going to Nebraska in the States. You know,
it's not quite that bad, is it?
Well, it can be really cold. It's really, once you get up to the top of the plateaus, with lots of wonderful cows and everything, but it's pretty open, and it gets these winds coming down from the further into the volcanic area of the Massif Central. So it gets to be really, really chilly up there. You know?
Yeah. I remember driving up there for basketball games with my daughter, and in the winter, we'd often head into snow.
Into snow,
I mean, not ever, no blizzards or anything, but,
no.
In southern France, it doesn't take much for us to call it snow.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That white stuff that falls on the ground. Yeah. But anyway, so here's Rodez, and if you're leaving from Toulouse, it's about a 2-hour ride. Okay, by car.
Yeah,
I talk about car. You can actually you can take a train. I've taken the train.
Rodez, yes,
I've taken the train with actually some with students. I've taken the train to Rodez several times. It's actually longer. It's about 2 hours and 30 to 40 minutes because you have to. It's slower, but it is still a good 2-hour drive, and it's about 160 kilometers. Okay, so that gives it's 100 miles away, but it's not all highway. There's a brand new highway road that takes you up. You basically go up through Albi, and then you veer off going to Rodez, but you can do it in a more scenic way. So my suggestion is, it depends on where you're coming from. Obviously, if you've decided to spend a week exploring the area of the Massif Central, well, you have to figure out how to get to Rodez from where it is you are. But if you're doing it coming from either Montpellier or Toulouse, you just know that that's about the same time you're going to take to get there.
Couple of hours,
and you go through. Although the vegetation is very different if you're coming from Montpellier, which is much more Mediterranean, what happens is once you get past Albi, you really start going into very beautiful rolling hill country. It's very pretty. It's as you get actually, if you're doing the route coming from the area around Toulouse, before you actually get to the city of Rodez, you go through a very beautiful hilly area that's called the Ségala.
Ségala,
yes. S-E in English, S-E-G-A-L-A, but with E with an accent.
Yeah.
And actually, the word Ségala is from the same root as the word seigle, because that is where seigle grows. And seigle, for those of you out there who don't know it, is rye, like in rye bread.
Yeah.
Right? It's the grain, right?
Yeah.
And it actually is one of the areas in France that produces it.
So this is a town called Ségala?
No, it's a region.
Oh.
It's actually the region.
I have never heard of it.
Yeah.
Usually you mention stuff that I've heard of, but I don't really know. But this one I've never even heard of.
Well, there you are.
Oof.
And not only that, but it comes from the term that was created by the Romans, Segodunum, which means mountain of rye.
Mountain of rye.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? I love rye bread. So there you are. And it's really, of course, from a distance, it looks like wheat.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and also, this is a little bit of a divergence because of talking about Rodez, but there are stories that are in a lot of books written by French historians who like to write novels that take place in the Middle Ages, because in the Middle Ages, one of the ways people died very often was from rye that had been that becomes it's not that it goes rotten, something happens to it, it gets a mold on it, and it's mortal, it's deadly. And after a while, there were two things that used to happen in the Middle Ages. Sometimes there were actually epidemics where in a village there were lots of people who would die because
they ate all
of this bad rye, and it could have been on purpose or not. And that is, some of the people who made the bread. But also it was a way of people getting poisoned on purpose. So my head is filled with stuff like that.
Death by bread.
Death by rye. Not just buy your wheat, don't buy your rye. Anyway, so as you get there, and then when you approach Rodez, one of the things that I remember the very first time I saw it, I was surprised by, is that it's actually perched up high on the top of a hill. Actually, I guess I'm not even sure what the technological term is in geology, but because it's a hill, but it's kind of flat up on top, And the original Rodez was an oppidum.
Okay.
Which was an oppidum of the Celtic tribe, the Rutènes. The Rutènes. The Rutènes can be written one of two ways: Rutenes.
Rutenes
with an accent grave.
Yeah.
Or with a th. I've seen it written both ways.
Okay.
And it was the name of the particular Celtic population that lived in the region all around there in the Aveyron. And they are notorious in the history of the wars with the Romans because they were very, very good warriors. And they fought with the Aveyronus. So they're it's like reading something out of Asterix, I mean, and it turns out that the term Rutin, which is Celtic, means big and blonde. So there you are. If you have ever read Asterix out there, and you've seen these pictures of these guys with their long locks, made of blonde, and they're big and sturdy and everything. Yeah. They were great warriors. Mm-hmm. They were great warriors. And they put up a great resistance to the Romans. And then eventually, of course, they lost. That's basically the end of that story, after Caesar and all of that. And but it left the name is related to the name Rodez. Somehow it got converted.
Okay, so Rutin goes to Rodez.
Rutin became somewhere along the way Rodez. Okay. All of that's connected to there's all these R's floating around somewhere in there, and it became, of course, a part of the Roman Empire, and it very early on became a site of a Christian community with a cathedral. But it turns out, I was reading about this yesterday, it's really interesting. It's not, the history of Rodez is very strange. And apparently they say it's one of the reasons it never became more important than it did, because it could have competed with Carcassonne and even Toulouse, except that there were, by the time we get to the period of the Charlemagne, the empire, and the counts and the viscounts and all of that, part of Rodez was under the control of the counts of Rodez, and part of it was under the control of the bishops.
Okay.
And they fought with each other all the time.
Okay.
And the city...
Sounds counterproductive.
It's totally counterproductive, right? So apparently the city was pretty much divided in two.
Okay, so that's why it didn't manage to grow as big as it could have. Okay.
Right. It was originally walled in as by the Romans. Mm-hmm. Then the bishops built the church, which is still there, which of course is in its second or third reincarnation, which is absolutely fabulous, called Sainte Marie, Notre Dame de Rodez. But it was built onto the walls of the ancient Rodez on the outside. So they basically created a new medieval Christian area that is pretty much what you still see now when you go there. You can still see parts of the ramparts. But apparently what happened was that lasted for a number of centuries. And how they managed to do that and how they managed to work out the management even of a city like that is beyond me, because it was actually on a major trade route going north-south in France. And it had fairs, and it had all this other stuff that most of these other big, towns in the Middle Ages had. But the fact that they kept fighting with each other kept the city from really developing further than that.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of odd, when you think about it. And then it suffered enormous amounts of invasions. A good part of the city was sacked in the 8th century by the Saracens. They made it that far in 725. They burnt down the old cathedral. Mm-hmm. They actually burned it down, and the new ones started being built, believe it or not, in the 1000s.
Year 1000.
And then, of course, as in the case of many of these cathedrals, was built, burned a little bit, was destroyed a little bit, built again. There was a huge collapse of a huge tower in the year 12, I can't remember now exactly, but 12 something or other. And the huge church tower actually collapsed. And so the church that exists there now, which is a cathedral, it's really quite amazing to see, was begun in the early 1200s.
Okay.
And was finished, of course, just about a couple of hundred years later.
So this is similar to Notre Dame. I mean, this is like the same time frame.
Same time frame.
Yeah.
Same time frame. Just a teeny little bit later. I mean, but what makes it very, very impressive, and this is true not only of the cathedral, but of everything in this area, is that it's made of red and purple sandstone. It's beautiful. This is a region geologically that has lots and lots of sandstone. I don't know why. I have no idea why there's limestone in certain areas, sandstone in another. This is not my field. However, the church itself has all these nuances of red and purple and like a reddish brown, because that is the natural color of the stone. And the entire thing is built that way, inside and out. So it's got this glow to it that is absolutely beautiful. When you've gotten used to seeing all of these churches made out of limestone that are white or pale yellow and everything, which are very beautiful, but this is very different. In fact, this whole area, when you go up and leave Rodez and you go further north as you get towards this other town that we'll talk about, Conques, the land you can see is red. So it's interesting because I don't know if that's just me, because I associate Rodez with the Routen with red, with the color red. You know, so they're all R's. This is my R's. You know, and the church is really very, very beautiful. It also has, believe it or not, the tallest church tower of any cathedral in France, 87 meters high.
Oh wow, that is high.
87 meters high, all carved out of sandstone. The sculptures on the outside and on the inside are really amazing. And when you go inside, it's vast. It's this huge, huge, huge cathedral, still used as a cathedral. It's a lot of the stained glass windows, of course, have been replaced. They're more recent windows. But you get this glow of the light coming through that makes it very impressive to walk around. And then there are 2 or 3 spots inside the cathedral where you can still see things that are actually from the 1200s, you know, carvings, pillars with capitals on them and things like that. It's I've never been there when there have been a lot of people. Rodez is visited more now than it was in the past, but it's not one of these churches where you have zillions of people coming in at the same time.
Yeah, you don't have anybody walking around saying silence.
Yeah, right.
No.
Although you could. I mean, if you walk around with me, you usually have somebody going silence, you know, because my voice seems to carry somehow, especially in cathedrals. But it's very, very beautiful. And it is built literally right next to a piece of the ancient ramparts. So you can see. And now, this is what happened. Rodez was pillaged by the English in the 1400s. It was largely attacked during the French Revolution. A lot of the old parts of Rodez basically no longer exist. But the cathedral and a few other things around there were saved by our wonderful Prosper de Mérimée, who is the same man who actually saved the Jacobins here in Toulouse.
Right.
And Prosper Mérimée was a writer, but who was designated as kind of like minister of culture, I guess, and whose job was to go around France and see with these old structures what should be saved and brought back into condition and what shouldn't be. And thanks to him, list them and then make recommendations. You know, and so that is actually what has helped save Notre Dame in Rodez.
Notre-Dame. Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. We have so many beautiful historical buildings.
Right.
I mean, and when I'm saying historical, I'm talking 800-900 years old.
Right, exactly.
But we have so many of them that it's a curse. You know, you can't. How do you take care of all of these things?
Well, it is a problem, and of course, it also brings up the whole debate that just occurred over whether all that money should go to fixing Notre Dame in Paris or whether all of these other churches and small things in areas that are not Paris should be given that money instead. I mean,
well, apparently Notre Dame, they've only collected about 10% of
what was
promised. So, you know, we'll see.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly what will happen.
People are generous in the moment, but then they feel generous. But then when it comes to writing the check, they might not be quite so generous.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the other things, though, that's really interesting about this cathedral, it is actually astonishing to me, having read about and talked about and gone to so many of these places, is that this is a cathedral where we actually think we know the name of the architect. Which is really, really unusual.
Yeah, normally they can take a guess, but sometimes... But...
So there was a man named Jean Deschamps.
Deschamps, okay.
Right, who, in fact, is the man responsible for the design of the Cathedral of Narbonne.
Okay.
And of
Which is also an impressive
church. Which is also impressive. Yeah. And Clermont-Ferrand. Clermont-Ferrand. He did the church there too.
Oh, Clermont-Ferrand.
Wait.
Oh, okay. I thought, okay.
And apparently it was either him or his son, because his son followed in his footsteps. And this is, we're talking in the 1200s.
Yeah.
He was originally from the north. So that is also one of the reasons why the church in Rodez, like the one in Narbonne, are basically Northern Gothic style.
Okay.
As opposed to the churches down here around Toulouse.
Yes, where they are made of heavy brick.
Right. And
fortifications
don't,
almost.
Right. And don't have the same floor plan in the inside.
Right.
This is typical of a Northern Gothic church, So he was responsible, which is why you see the gargoyles and all the rest of it on the outside, very much like Saint Etienne here in Toulouse, which was redone in that fashion. So we do know that he actually built it, and it was kept up by his son and then his grandson. So it really becomes a very interesting example of a very specific kind of architecture. So when you get to Rodez, if you're going to visit the old city center, you have to go all the way up to the top. And it kind of winds its way, and you can see the city, how it developed. It's kind of developed spiraling down, right, from the old city, which is all up on the top of this hill, where the old city is not very big. What's left of it, that is. There's a little bit of a city center, and then there's the old parts, which is a few really very pretty streets with very nice medieval houses and the rampart and the cathedral. And then you go out, there are 2 or 3 big parking areas around there. And then you walk from there. I've never actually, interestingly, except for once, the very first time, I've always gone by train and bus. So
so the train takes you.
The train takes you to the down. No,
okay,
the train takes you. The train station is down below, and then you have to take a bus. Rodez has a great. And is famous for having a very, very good system of public transportation that is very inexpensive.
Okay.
So it's very easy to get a bus that takes you all the way up to the top. There are actually several that go up if you don't go by car. But once you get up there, everything is within walking distance. It's very small.
Okay.
So you have
my memory is a pretty small.
It's very
city
small.
Center, yeah.
You have a very cute little old medieval city center, the ramparts, the church. There's another small church nearby. And then the other thing, and this is a far more recent thing, but it's also something that has really brought an enormous number of tourists to Rodez, is that in the year 2014, so very recently, the Soulage Museum was opened up.
Ah, yes.
No.
Soulage, so that's
Soulages.
Okay.
Pierre Soulage, who is...
I've heard of him.
Celebrating this summer his 100th birthday.
Okay.
He's still alive and still painting.
Wow.
He's quite amazing. He's really quite amazing. So Pierre Soulage, who is, in the famous words of my dear husband, who hates anything after the end of the 19th century, is probably the only contemporary artist that he can bear to look at, whose work is totally 100% abstract.
Right, so he does black lines.
His work is based on luminosity and the reflective light on color. He started out, yes, you're right, his work is about black, but let me start off by backing up. He's from there. Okay. He's from there. And in about the year 2000, having already done the windows for the Abbey in Conques, because he is a native son of the area. And 19 years ago, he was already getting on there. He was
he's 100 now.
He went into discussion with the administration of Rodez, saying that he would like to leave part of his collection to the city of Rodez.
Okay.
And I don't know how this worked. You know even better than I, how complicated it is to get money to create something new, etc. They managed to get the funding, with the idea being to create a brand new museum in contemporary art style. I mean, a contemporary structure, to house his collection. And at first, he pledged about 250 pieces. He's the most important living French artist today.
Living, okay.
And he is internationally known, okay, in contemporary art. And then a few years later, he said, no, actually, I will give you 500
that's a lot.
of my pieces, which means, and I've been to the museum now, I think 5 times or 6 times. The museum has a huge collection of his work from his very earliest, when he was still a student. So you see where he started from, going through the various time frames and time periods of the development of his art to the most recent, the last few pieces, which were done in the last, I think it was the most recent is about 10, 12 or 13 years ago. These are very, very big pieces. So the museum is really designed for that. So it's big, beautiful spaces with another side space that's for other art, as a contemporary art museum. Okay. And I've seen shows there too that have been very, very good. So it took a long time to build. There was a lot of problem about getting enough money. The architects turned out to be from Catalonia in Spain. I never heard of them before. But what they did was they made a building that is made out of 10-core steel. Now, if you don't know what that is, 10-core steel is that it's a steel that is specifically treated to look like rusted on the outside. And so it echoes the color of the cathedral.
I see.
Even though the building is totally contemporary, it's flat, it's cantilevered. Because this is the edge of the big hill that Rodez is on. So the front of it faces a park called the Parc de Forel. That's very beautiful, and it has a bunch of other stuff in it. And the back end is cantilevered so that if you go to the back part, you actually are looking down at the valley. So it's very impressive. It's very modern architecture. It won a huge prize when it was finally finished. And it was finally inaugurated with Soulage there and the president of France and all the rest in 2014. And one of the reasons why a lot of the people in and around Rodez did not want it was they said it would cost a fortune and it was going to just be a drain on the economy. Well, of course, what has happened is that instead of that, it has doubled, if not tripled, the number of tourists who go to Rodez.
Yeah, because if you know modern art, you want this.
Right, you want this. And so it has been very good for the economy of Rodez. And it's really a beautiful museum. I mean, if you don't like contemporary art, it's not even interesting to go to, but it's really fabulous. And the space is gorgeous. And the exhibits that they have that are even temporary exhibits, like right now there's a temporary exhibit that's very interesting. And the site is very beautiful. And it includes inside it, that makes it a little bit snobbish. That's the only part that sort of annoys me. There's a gourmet restaurant that's fairly expensive, which I've never eaten in.
But let's face it, contemporary art usually attracts
people with money.
Rich white people.
Well, it certainly attracts people who are... Not always. I mean, there are a lot of young people. I mean, every time I go, you see lots and lots of young people. And I doubt very much if it's the young people that will go and eat in this little restaurant. That's part of it. I mean, it's beautifully designed. You know, there's little wading pool kind of things and everything. But it's very expensive. Yeah. But so you don't have to eat there. I mean, you just go to see this museum. It's really a fabulous museum. And last year, I think I just read there were over 100,000 people who had gone to visit it. You know, so it's really bringing people in, because aside from the fact that in the last 45, 50 years, there have been startups and kind of high-tech things that have moved in, a lot of the old industry had just dried up in the area. But if you're going to spend a day in Rodez, you visit the little old town, you visit the museum, which I personally think is really, really worth it. And then there are little things you can discover. For instance, once I went with a group of students, and because of the timing with the train, we wound up getting to the museum only 45 minutes before it was closing for lunch, because in the winter, unfortunately, it's still a small town, so it doesn't stay open all day. In the summer, it stays open all day.
Okay, but yeah.
But not in the winter.
That's a drag.
So we went and had lunch, and there's actually this fake American diner that's just around the corner and across the street from the museum, and the kids got a kick out of eating there. It had milkshakes and hamburgers and French fries. So you can do that if you're having a hit of homesickness, if you really want to. Don't want to eat French. And then
you were with French kids.
I was with American kids.
Oh, American kids.
I was with American kids.
They wanted to try that.
They were, they'd spent 6 months in France, and it was like, oh, a diner. How cool. Anyway, it was actually fun. We ate that. But then we were walking around, and I discovered, and you can actually visit it, there's and I don't even know myself how to pronounce this in French. I've always had a problem with this. How do you pronounce Harras?
Harras. Arras.
What?
Arras.
Where you breed
The horses. Ah, c'est un haras.
An haras.
C'est un haras. I don't think you say the S.
Oh, I hate that word.
Yes. I'm pretty sure you don't say the S. Not that I'm very well versed in horses or horse breeding,
but the word itself. My guess is, if we look it up, that the word is actually originally from the Arabic because of the way it's pronounced and everything. But so if you go walk a little bit away from the old city center, you kind of go down a bit of the hill, and then up the other side, there's a big high school there. And then all of a sudden to the right, there's this aha. And you can walk in. I mean, it's a huge piece of land. It's an enormous piece of land. And you can visit the grounds. And we actually met a young woman there, and she kind of was like, "Hello, what are you doing here?" And she took us into one of the stables. And these are all training. These are all breeding for race horses. I mean, this is beautiful horses. And then you can see some of them exercising in the pens, I guess, what you call it or anything. Anyway, and it also, there's a part where it has benches and you can just sit and have a look out over the valleys. It's absolutely gorgeous. You know?
I never knew there were horses particularly much in Rodez. Okay.
And I'm, horses are not exactly my thing, but it was really nice.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful to see.
Yeah, they're beautiful animals.
And it's one that's famous, which of course I didn't know. So I was really happy that we sort of just fell onto it.
Yeah.
At least we didn't fall under a horse. Just fell onto it, And then at the same time, there were just a couple of other little museums that you can visit if you're interested. There's one that was there, and it's been there for a long time, that's actually quite nice. That's called the Musée Fenaille.
Fenaille, yes.
Fenaille. Fenaille.
Fenaille, okay.
Yeah. And it's a little museum of archaeology. And history of the region.
And of course you went in.
And I went in, and it has the largest...
You go into all the museums.
Because I like museums. And it has the largest collection of menhir statues in France.
Menhir?
Wow.
We're back to our friends Asterix et Obelix.
Yeah, we sure are. I mean, this is real Asterix and Obelix country. This is what this is. It has the largest collection of Neolithic sculpture. Interesting, huh? It has,
Does it explain what these things were for?
Well, nobody really knows, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I'm going up to Brittany in another almost 2 weeks, and there are zillions of them over there, and they're really interesting to look at, and it's your guess as good as mine. I mean, people think that it had to do with the gods of Neolithic peoples, because these are, some of them, like the ones up in Brittany, I mean, they carved into granite. You have to have a good hand to carve into granite.
Yeah, you have to do it on purpose.
Right. So it's, these things are shaped like flat bullets. And that's a ridiculous thing to say, but, they're
kind of like bullets.
They're fat, like a flat, and it's the surface that's carved, I mean, it doesn't go that deep inside. But some of them look like humanoid. Like they have like the equivalent of a face and some arms, and some of them are just forms with signs on them.
And they lined them up and everything.
And in the north, with a few places they've found that they've lined them up. But in the south, in this region around Rodez, they found a lot of them, but they're scattered all over. Okay. So one of the theories was, of course, that it was the indication of a place where people were buried. But apparently that's not always the case. They do laser soundings and things like that.
Yeah, they could verify that. I mean,
yeah, it's almost. I have an intuitive idea that they're more like in France. There are lots of places where if you go along a rural road, you will come across a cross somewhere.
Yeah,
it's like this is the same kind of thing. Like it's there to sort of remind you of the gods at the time or something like that. It just seems like that, but. Who knows?
We don't know.
Apparently, nobody really knows. But anyway, they're kind of cool to look at, And it's a little museum, but it's really very popular. And it's just on the other side behind the cathedral.
Okay.
So everything's really close by there,
Even the Arras is not very... The Arras is not very...
It's not very far. It's just really not very far.
Yeah.
And then... there's an art center as well.
An art center?
Yeah. they're trying to make it a new place because of the Soulage Museum. So there's a bit of an art center there too, and then there's a part of the university which is brings in a lot of young people.
So you went into the art center as well?
No, I actually didn't. We didn't. Okay. We didn't really have time to go inside. Okay. But anyway, so it's not a mind-blowing kind of place like Albi is. It's not like it's a place. It's the old city center is much smaller than in Albi, but it's really, I think it's a lovely kind of thing to do, to go to a place like this that's a little bit different from other places. And between the cathedral, the museum, and just the little walk around and everything, it's very nice.
Right. So to review, you would visit the cathedral, you would visit the Soulage Museum, you would visit the Haras, and probably also the little archaeology museum.
Yeah, and then just take, it's a little half-hour walk around the old city center and see a few of the old buildings. There are a couple of really beautiful little Renaissance buildings, and have a nice, if you're there at lunchtime, have a nice lunch or something.
Right.
Like
So we
that.
have to mention that the food specialty in Aveyron is
Well, we have two. Well, we have aligot.
Aligot, yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Aligot saucisse.
Aligot saucisse. Now, those really, really, really come from the Aubrac area.
Okay,
further north, which is good for winter.
Yeah. So aligot is this. It's mashed potato, very stringy and cheesy.
Yeah, it's Cantal cheese, but a special kind of Cantal cheese, garlic, olive oil, and mashed potatoes.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's extremely fattening, but it's delicious.
It's totally delicious.
Yeah.
Totally delicious and totally really
decadent.
It's heavy food.
And it will stick to your ribs.
And it sticks to your ribs.
Well, it's kind of like the cassoulet in Toulouse. That's the kind of meal that you don't have every day.
Right.
Wow.
Right. I mean, unfortunately, does happen that people come in the summertime and they say, "Oh, I've heard about cassoulet. I want to eat one." Well, good luck. Eating when it's 90-something degrees out and you eat that, you need to sleep the afternoon off.
At least they'll sleep with the window open,
They'll sleep with the window open. They better sleep with the window open anyway. Now, the other one, but it's from the northern. Again, it's tripou. I have never eaten that.
Disgusting.
I have not eaten tripou, and I don't think I ever will.
My husband just passed me a note that says, aligot is what they eat in heaven.
There you go, aligot. Right.
All the way, aligot, all the way.
Really.
Aligot is spelled Aligot.
Right. Yeah. And it's also like aligut. It gets to your gut after a while. It's really delicious. It's really very good.
And then wines and stuff. Do they have much wine up there?
No, it's not a wine producing area. Yeah. The whole area, this whole region is definitely not Mediterranean, so they don't produce any wine. But they're so close to Montpellier, Saint-Guillaume-le-Désert, that they have all the wines from Languedoc.
Right. There's wine not too far. But.
Yeah, it's like the wine comes from an hour away at the most. You don't have to worry about it. It's not coming from New Zealand. It's really just coming from close by. And as you get further north, in fact, it's connected to where we're going to go from there. It's walnut country. And you know how I love walnuts. So we have, it's interesting because you have the walnut country around Grenoble, which is famous for its AOC walnuts, and then you have walnut country in the Quercy, which is in the Lot. Mm-hmm. And Annie's looking at me because I'm waving my hands like I'm going to conjure up a walnut in a second, And this area too has a lot of walnuts, but they're not as famous. I don't know if it's because they don't do as much real cultivation of it as a commercial thing or not. But they make
maybe we have enough walnuts already.
They make a croquant with walnuts. Oui. A croquant is like a kind of it's a very light cookie, kind of like almost meringue, but with walnuts in it. It's great. It's delicious. But if you buy a bag, forget it, because a half an hour later, all you've got is crumbs.
Well, croquant is.
So what the thing about them is you have to eat it right away. Mm-hmm. So here we are talking about food. It must be getting time to lunch. It's getting lunchtime. Okay, so from Rodez.
Okay, Lisa, you know what? We've been talking 40 minutes already. So I think we need to put conch in a different episode.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'll release them one week after the other. Otherwise, it's going to be massively long, unless you have nothing to say about conch. But.
Well, I have, but I don't know how much it is. I guess we did a lot of chatter because I didn't think I had that much to say about Rodez.
You sure did have a lot to say about Rodez, which is good. So at least we're going to say goodbye to our listeners for now, and then next week they'll hear all about conch.
Okay.
All right.
Goodbye.
Au revoir, Elise.
Goodbye.
Well, you're not leaving yet because we're just going to record it right away. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Laurie Schneier, Jane Bauer, Ellen Curry, Brittany Nelson, and Lauren Runyon. Sorry if I can't say your name right, for pledging to support the show on Patreon in the last couple of weeks while I was taking a break. Patreons enjoy several rewards, including membership into a secret Facebook group where I answer questions as soon as they come up. Patrons can also hire me to be their trip consultant and help them work out prickly details about their trips. Sometimes the hardest part is picking, what to do and what to leave out because you don't have all month. And seeing that I've been to most of these places, I can usually give you some informed opinions. Let's put it that way. So visit patreon.com/join us, Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes, to see the different reward tiers. And thank you so much for giving back. My thanks also to Ross Kelch, Renee Loper, Barbara Feisinger, and Lachlan Cook for sending in a one-time donation using the green button on any page on joinusinfrance.com that says Tip Your Guide. Donations of $20 and over also get you an invite to the secret Facebook group. I'll do a quick personal update this week. My parents-in-law came to visit, and it was lovely having them. I had a lot of fun. It's always good to visit and reconnect with family. We did some traveling. We did a lot of eating. Did a lot of cooking. My sister-in-law also visited. She's in Paris with my husband today. It's her last day. They took one of the tours, and they went to the music museum, and they seem to be having a great day. Now I'm back at work and pushing hard to finish up the new Montmartre voice map tour to be released before the end of the month. Wow, what a place, Montmartre. I think you'll love this new tour of Montmartre. But I better be off and be writing some more of the best of Montmartre. And I'll be back with you next week for an episode about conch. Thank you so much for listening and for telling other Francophiles about this podcast. They'll find it anywhere they get their podcast or on joinusinfrance.com. Send questions or feedback to Annie at joinusinfrance.com. Have a great week of trip planning or a great time in France this week, and I'll talk to you next week. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2019 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.